Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening whenever you are watching or listening to this, and welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and joined as always by Francois Geoffrey. Francois, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? It stopped storming here, so hopefully
Yeah.
It looks like you made it home safe.
I did, yes, thankfully. Yeah, it stopped storming here too. I have no confidence that it's going to hold off for very long though, because
It's supposed to be like that all week. So
it's supposed to be so gross all week. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to be widespread too. So it's supposed to be storming in Conyers also, which is where my race is this weekend. And I have the 10 a.m. heat, and it's supposed to like totally fall out at like 11 a.m. And I'm still going to be on the course because it's obstacles and I don't run. So it's going to be rough.
What's this thing called again?
It's called Rugged. No, it's called Rugged Maniac. So It's kind of in like the same vein as Tough Mudder. It's an obstacle course mud run 5K. And this one has
the shock water.
Yeah. Somebody told me one time that in like Savage Race, when you finish, they like shock the water at the bottom of the pool. I don't know if they were saying that to freak me out. There's also some of them where you have to like crawl under live, like electrified barbed wire. So you have to sign waivers and shit, like obviously.
Yeah. Gotcha.
The one I'm doing is not that intense, but there are 25 obstacles. It is a 5K, but it ends with, they have like music and like a pull-up competition and like burgers and hot dogs and free beer. So I did it in 2019. Yeah. See, and that's why I'm capping off my period of sobriety with the Rugged Maniac with my free beer. There's no better way to end it.
25 obstacles sounds like going into international markets.
Yes, it does. Beautiful segue.
Beautiful segue.
Beautifully done. So today we are speaking with Ed Wiley with OFX about just that, expanding into international markets. So Ed, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really jealous that you're running a course with other people. I'm not jealous that you're getting shocked though.
But I'm not.
The free beer could get me.
It's good free beer too. We have like a ton of breweries down here in Georgia, and they usually like, I don't know if they donate. I'm sure I'm sure my ticket paid for it. It's not free, but yeah, it's always really good beer too. But are you still locked down or re-locked down?
We were quite lucky because we had about, a 12-month spell where we didn't really have any cases in Australia, or probably Sydney, I should say. Victoria had a few. But then we've been in lockdown for about a month and a half. Just unfortunately, the Delta variant has kind of like ruined our little fun that we had down here. Had to move my wedding, unfortunately, but now everyone's getting vaccinated, so we're kind of like a bit slow to take up the vaccination in Australia. There was like, because everyone was like living a life where there wasn't a COVID around, so they're like, oh, why would we get vaccinated? And it is not. We don't live in America where they make the vaccines like a Pfizer, so they like had to get shipped in. Obviously, you're probably understanding that shipping's getting delayed, and the cost of shipping is outrageous these days. But yeah, so hopefully back in a month or two, and then we can go back to the pub and have a beer and do Tough Mudder, or what was it called? The race that you're doing?
It's called Rugged Maniac.
Rugged Maniac.
Yes.
Awesome. There's a plug.
Yeah.
You're in Georgia. Go do Rugged Maniac.
I'm in Atlanta. Awesome. Well, how far did you have to push your wedding to?
So it was scheduled for April this year. Then we pushed it to October because we wanted because my family's from New Zealand originally. Originally, so they're always from New Zealand. And then we wanted them to come over, but the borders are closed with New Zealand. Then they opened up. There was there's a bubble, so New Zealand could travel to Australia freely without any quarantine. And then they closed it again most recently. So we had to push it again to next April. So third time lucky, cross fingers, but looking forward to it.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We can chat about that offline because I've got some creative COVID safety precaution solutions for weddings. So, but
Lisa
let's talk.
Is a wedding planner in her spare time.
On the side.
There you go.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
It's been a ride. Yeah, I started my wedding planning career at the height of the pandemic on total accident. So it's been interesting to say the least.
It's going to be a boom time coming out. So.
2022 is going to be insane for the wedding industry and just the hospitality and entertainment and everything. It's going to be hopefully wild in the best sense of the word. You know.
There you go, like inside tip, first inside tip, get into the wedding category. It's been slow. Like if you're like looking at the Google Analytics, it's going to go.
Exactly.
The amount of money I'm spending, I can tell that there is money involved.
Oh yeah.
People are willing to spend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of
category.
We could spend an hour and a half.
It's not.
Well, Ed, let's go ahead and learn a little bit more about you. Other than you enjoy surfing, you are living in Australia and getting married, hopefully very soon. So what are you doing with OFX? How'd you find your way into the e-com payments world?
Yeah, so like we were discussing before, I saw the University of Virginia in the background, and we were like
West
mentioning,
Virginia.
West Virginia. You got to make that right. The Mountaineers. So I went to University of Texas on gap year, so I did a bit of study over there, hook 'em horns, and then I finished up and I had really no money, and I moved back to Sydney, Australia, and tried to find a finance job. And then I landed it up at OFX, and that was 9 years ago. So it's been a long journey with OFX. When I started out, I kind of like slowly moved up the journey within OFX. So I started out on the customer service desk, and then I moved into partnerships where I kind of created a niche with e-commerce. So about 6 years ago, like e-commerce wasn't really a thing. It was kind of like people were doing it, but it wasn't really talked about that much. And then it kind of just took off. So we designed a product around that to help businesses sell internationally and receive funds from marketplaces around the world. Before that, we traditionally helped businesses who pay suppliers in China, so accounts payable. If you got a supplier payment in Europe or China or Indonesia, we would typically get you a better exchange rate when sending money internationally. So if you've ever been to a currency exchange when you're traveling overseas, you probably quickly realize that the exchange rate that you get is not the one that you see on Google. So that's a similar with business, but it's a bit more impacting, because it's not like $500 you're changing or like a couple $100. It's like you're doing a $20,000 payment, you're doing a $100,000 payment, and it's like a few percentage points here and there will impact. And Australian banks are notorious for taking 4 to 5% on the exchange rate. So OFX, we typically charge 0.5% or less. So you're adding 3% plus to your bottom line, which is 3% on 100 grand. It's quite nice. $3,000 in your back pocket. I'm sure you can invest those funds back into your business a bit better than just giving it to the bank. So that's pretty much where we landed, and what we did. We got a lot of I think we got 25,000 or 30,000 corporate clients who use OFX to send money to supplier payments. And then around 2016, we created a product for receiving payments. So this is kind of where the international expansion came in and kind of focusing on e-commerce. So we realized there were a number of kind of businesses who are like, oh, it's great that you help us with supplier payments, but I need to receive funds as well when I sell into different markets. Are you able to help with that? And because we have OFX as a company, we have got offices in 8 countries around the world. So we support the global aspect, and that allows us to be able to have receiving accounts in those countries. So it's like a US dollar account with Bank of America, a Canadian dollar account with Bank of Montreal, pound account with Barclays in the UK and Deutsche Bank in Germany. And so if you do expand to those markets, we can set you up with a bank account in your name to receive funds back in. So that was kind of like a revelation to us. We didn't really know it was an issue until kind of like it was an issue. And then create it into a product. And here we are today in the e-commerce world, and Amazon's kind of just taken over. And it seems right now, like Amazon US, obviously the biggest market. If you're selling from outside of the US, so like you're based in Australia or the UK or Europe, most people think about selling on Amazon the US as well as their local market. But if you're based in the US, you typically think about just selling on Amazon US. So over the next kind of year, I'm making it my goal to try and educate kind of those larger sellers in the US to how to kind of expand internationally. So that's kind of like my ideal clientele to kind of educate, trying to cut out some of that disinformation around how hard it is and kind of like what are the services required, like try to, be that helping hand.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you're trying to speak with these like larger Amazon US sellers and talk to them about expanding internationally, do you mean just within the international Amazon marketplaces, or are you speaking with them about expanding to some of the more, maybe not more popular, but some of the other marketplaces that maybe we don't have here in the US so that they can expand their portfolio?
Yeah, like outside of the US, like Amazon's like it is still big, and it's probably the number one choice for you to kind of like tick off your box as you expand overseas. So if you're thinking expanding into UK or Europe, you'll probably expand with Amazon as your first step. But then you're like within 6 months or from day one, you need to probably put out your strategy around if I'm there in the market, and I've already invested so much money and effort into a product, getting it trademarked, shipping the goods over, doing, if you're going into Europe, any language translation. Why wouldn't you sell into the other like secondary marketplaces? Because Europe is a lot more segmented into country-specific marketplaces. So every country does have like a preferred marketplace in their local vendors. Like Bol is the number one marketplace in the Netherlands. So even if you did sell on Amazon and you turned on Amazon Netherlands, you're not actually the number one marketplace in that country. So, and then Cdiscount and Darty and Frank, they're like the number one, number 2 and 3 in France. And when I say number 2 and 3, like that, like significant volumes going through there. So Europe as a whole, if you kind of add up all the countries in the UK, it's pretty much the same level as obviously transaction volume or like sales as the US market. So it's like everyone thinks the US market's like the biggest market by a long way, whereas actually the European, the UK market, if you combine them into like the EU, they are actually on par. However, like the competition is far less because everyone goes to the US market as like number one choice or the first choice. It's like, oh, they all speak English. It's just standardized. Everything's available. Whereas the UK European market competition's far less. Like, and then when you go off Amazon, it's even less, even more. So like your ability to sell, you might gain access to the same amount of sales or like opportunity on like a second tier marketplace like Kaufland, which is like the number 2 in Germany. Or I think they're number 3 because Otto is the number 2. But yeah, there's all these different brands, all these different marketplaces. Don't have to deep dive into that too much today, but I'm sure there's like you've got Google. But yeah, happy to hit me up if you need any like advice on where to go into Germany or Europe. Awesome. But yeah, so like if you go off Amazon, not like all the sellers don't do that. So it's like you've even got less competition. So like, you've got a better chance of winning the buy box or kind of getting a sale directly with the end consumer. So I'd 100% look at that. And if you are selling a seasonality product, like if you're selling like winter clothes or like summer or anything with seasonality, you got to think about the Australian market because both speak English. But you can offload your out of season stock to Australia because that's a huge one, especially if you're selling like Anything to do with summer, like Australia's got a very long summer, so it's quite like easy to sell year round. It's like middle of the winter pretty much now. So what is it now? Now we're in August in Australia, but it was like 24 degrees yesterday. So, and there was people swimming. So, like
So is that like 50 Fahrenheit?
I was about to ask, is that Celsius or Fahrenheit?
That's Celsius. So
Okay.
it's like, so it's a bit warmer than 24. I think yes, it's probably like 60 or something.
I'm gonna Google the conversion because I
I don't know the conversion. Yeah, so like you don't like when you're thinking about selling internationally, there are kind of like some first up steps. First of all, you just got to be thinking about the right time where you're going to spend your effort, because unless you've got like a product that's trademarked, I probably wouldn't. You got like A9, is it not A9? A plus content.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't think about expanding internationally. It's kind of something that you want to do like as a basic step before you sell internationally, especially if you're based in the US. Because if you're based in the US, you want to think about optimizing your listing in the US and getting a safety net of kind of like, okay, this is the product I have here. I've made it successful. Now what do I do? What's my next expansion? Like, you go into Canada, yes, Canadian market's not huge, but like when people say international expansion to Canada, it's like you can do that, and OFX can provide a Canadian dollar bank account to save on like that conversion from Canadian dollars to US dollars. That might save you if you're using Amazon own conversion rate. They charge 1.5%, whereas OFX charge 0.5% or less. So it's like you'll save 1%. So on $100,000 of sales, that's $1,000 back into your bank account. So sorry if I'm rambling now.
No, it's okay.
No, that's important. What I guess is the downside to it? Like, why wouldn't someone? I imagine they would leave Amazon doing the conversion for them as a pure convenience, and I would only imagine OFX is like one added step to their process. So what does that look like? Why is there resistance to even using OFX compared to using something like Amazon conversion?
Yeah, I don't think it's resistance. I think it's more so knowledge and understanding. So most people, when they expand to say just US onto Canadian or marketplace, they're just like, okay, I'll just take the conversion rate that they give me. Like, it's just what actually happens. You'll set a price in Canadian dollars. You're like, okay, I'll just like it'll adjust for you, and then you'll just receive the funds into your US dollar account. So one might be they don't know that there's another option out there. It's probably the most likely, especially if you're based in the US, because international payments is not really something that you do that often. And when you do typically talk about international payments, it's usually sending US dollars to, say, China. So it's actually just a wire transfer with additional expenses, because it's not actually converting funds from like Canadian dollars into US dollars like to China. So that's probably what like the number one is, probably education, and that's obviously a good takeaway from this. If you are selling in the US at the moment and you're selling into Canada, or you're a Canadian seller selling into the US, we can provide you a US dollar bank account with Bank of America that's held in the US. So if you're outside of the US wanting to do the conversion, we can save you that 1% compared to Amazon's rate. And then the other one is, as you said, they're a bit lazy. To be honest, they're like, oh, that's great, 1%. That doesn't really mean much. So like, if they're doing like less than $100,000 sales, like 1%, it's like, oh, that doesn't actually, like, their time and effort doesn't actually calculate, my care factor. So that's why I try to simplify it, where it's like $100,000, you save $1,000. It's like, that's pretty simple math for them to go, okay, is taking, it's going to take you 5 minutes to set up online. You're going to have to submit, some compliance documents as a one-off, which is going to take you probably another, 20 minutes. And then you can ask for it to be automated. So you can just say, any funds that come into my account, can you please automatically pay it into this account? So that's kind of like all set up. So in terms of like your time and effort, it might take all up 30 minutes. And then it'll save you $1,000 on $100,000 revenue. So if you're making $1 million, that's going to save you 10 grand on 30 minutes setup.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how I'd put it. But that's just for US sellers. So if you're based in like Canada, you're probably going to be doing more currency exchange because you're going to have to convert, when you're just setting up, you're probably not going to have those US dollar revenues coming in to pay for your supply payments. But also on that, your US dollar revenues would automatically convert to Canadian dollars, and then you have to convert Canadian dollars back into US dollars to pay your suppliers in, say, China. So you're getting hit with conversion twice. So you're getting 1.5% into Canada, and then you're going Canadian dollars into US dollars. So that's like most banks in Canada charge around 3%. So that's my basic math is you're saving 4%. So on $100,000 turnover, that's $4,000 saving. So because you're getting charged the 1.5% plus the 3%, and OFX is only charging 0.5%, so 4% saving.
So wait, you lost me for a second there. So
Sorry,
no, it's okay. No, it's okay. So, but it wasn't even the math. It was kind of the math. It was the process of how people get paid. So like if I live in Canada and I'm a Canadian-based seller, but I'm selling on Amazon US, and obviously any of that money that comes in needs to come into the Canadian dollar. To pay my suppliers, though, I can't. If my supplier is in China, I can't pay them in Canadian dollar to the.
Some of them don't want it. No.
So Chinese suppliers only accept two currencies. So when you're paying us, this is my point. Like if you're US based seller, like all you know about is US dollars. So like you're like, I'll just pay my supplier in China in US dollars. So it's like, I'll just take whatever currency they get. Like, who cares? Like the US dollar, woo.
Well, what an American way to think.
It's like, no, the US dollar is king. Like, it's like the US dollar is like, I think there was a stat like a few years ago. It was like 80% of the world's trade is done in US dollars. So it is like the main currency. If you're based in Canada, like, Amazon will automatically transfer you back in Canadian dollars, and then you'll have to convert those Canadian dollars into US dollars to pay your supplier, or Chinese yuan. So like we can pay in the local currency of China. And some suppliers prefer that, and depending on how large you are, you probably prefer to pay in the local currency of Chinese yuan, especially if you're a US seller, because they might mark up their price. They say, okay, well, it's going to cost you $40,000 US, or it's going to cost you the equivalent in Chinese yuan, like 39,500. So you're saving $500 there, because they'll like add in their buffer of charging you in US dollars instead of charging in the local currency. But that's probably a bit too confusing. We'll stick to just US dollars.
No. I think I'd love to actually dive into that a little bit because I think that that was a huge problem when the value was changing rapidly. So when it went from, I think it was like a 20 or 30% increase or difference in the US dollar versus the RMB at one point last year. Yeah, I think it was last year. And it was a time where also the cost of shipping somewhat started to rise, and it was just harder to get containers. But I know some factories also prefer to get paid in US dollars solely because they do get a tax subsidy from their government. So they might prefer to do that just to show that they are receiving US dollars. And renminbi is definitely a different way of transacting with them. And I think a lot of them, particularly the smaller ones, would prefer that. Just from our experience with working with factories. Now, when you're working with the suppliers overseas, are you always wiring it into a business bank account when it gets converted into RMB, or can it go to potentially like a personal account?
I would always go to a business account just for safe security. We always recommend making sure when you do your agreement with your supplier, you get their company chop. So like company chop's like a stamp of like the company that you deal with in China. and you make sure the name of the bank account is in the name of the same company that you're dealing with. So this can be kind of like tricky when you're dealing with a trading company, because the company that you're dealing with is like not the company that you're making the payment to, and you're like, well, I've just figured out this company that I'm dealing with is, but like they're just a middleman, and I need to actually just, that at that point you can go, okay, well, can you please provide me your business details, and you can make sure that you're paying the actual factory and not and like probably a senior company. It also gives you a lot of kind of security around, if the funds, if they just run off your funds. I don't think there's like, there is a very small chance of that happening, because most companies, and well, I shouldn't say most, like pretty much like next to all of them in China are much more incentivized by getting your business and long-term business than they are in terms of the short-term kind of gain of like winning your 30% deposit. Especially your supply, like your samples. Like I think I get a lot of questions around when I talk at conferences, is like, oh, how do you trust when you send to suppliers, you're sending them $100 for a sample, like how do you make sure that they're not going to run off your money? And I'm just like, well, if you're worried about that, I think you're probably not in the right business, because I think for them to make a sample for you and put your logo on it and then ship it to you, it's probably they're spending more than $100. Like they're investing in you more than you're investing in them.
I love that you said that, by the way. That itself can be an entire podcast, just because we're part of this education realm now too, right? So a lot of times in the past year, we've been trying to talk about these realities of, hey, suppliers can fire you just like you can fire them. They're investing more in you when you only give them 30% of a fully customized product, because what if you don't pay the 70%? Then they're stuck with a bunch of product that they had to put capital up front to buy the raw materials, to put together any tooling or moldings potentially that they might not have charged you for yet. I'm very glad that you said that. But
it's like, so usually when I speak outside of the US, it's like majority of my talk is around supplier payments, making sure you got the right terms. Have you talked to like, when is the right time to bring up like legal contracts, and kind of what can you do in between, that kind of like, you're not big enough, but you're not like, you're still a bit worried. It's like, and it goes back to make sure you're dealing with a company, make sure you get kind of like a full breakdown of what you're ordering, but also on the sample, do your own kind of inspection. Like I've listened to a number of podcasts. I think I listened to one the other day where it's like, they had an inspection of their product and they were using a third-party inspection company, and it was all approved. And then once they actually started selling the product, they had a lot of defects, and they were just like wondering why they were getting so many defects when, it passed inspection. They had to go in and do the inspection themselves. And what they realized is the inspection person that was doing it was just like opening the box, looking at it, being like, yep, sweet, next one, open the box, looks good, touch around, feel. And it's like, okay, well, when you think about when you're ordering your product, like do your own inspection and write down what you want to be inspected and how you want it to be inspected. Like if it's electricity, you might want it plugged in. If it's like anything to do with like the kitchen, you might want to actually use it yourself. And like, think about a way to do it, like, a bend test, or kind of a drop test, like you want to do it from like a certain height. So yeah, it's like so many things you can do that don't cost you money, but do take a bit of time to think about. Like, yes, if you're going to spend like money on a third party, inspection agent, make sure you do the work, because like a lot of people go, oh yeah, I've just paid third party inspection agent, and then they'll inspect the product, but they don't actually go through the checklist of what they're inspecting. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah, that's
a lot of time.
I was going to say, that's something that we've talked about ad nauseum, especially you, Francois, about like get your sample and try to break your own product, and then write out really, really clear, like your KQIs and like what exactly they need to be looking for on this product so that it can be up to par. And I think it's funny that you mentioned, like, if it's a kitchen product, like use it there. Cause wasn't it Chelsea Cohen that said she had sourced a kitchen product and they had the branding put on it, and it ended up being like an oil-based paint. And then when it got like cooking oil on it or something, it just like totally
Yeah.
smeared right off. Her friend like sent her a video of her just like wiping it off with her thumb. And that's
I
not to
think it was
Chelsea's like, fault or anything like that, but it's like really, really know your product before.
Yeah, put it in the microwave.
Yeah.
See if it melts.
Yeah, be your own worst customer.
Yes.
I mean that's always a good rule to stand by. And we could send you over a key quality indicator, KQIs is what we call them, checklist that we usually send out all of our users. If you ever want to share it with your audience,
that'd be great.
But when it comes to working with them, does Amazon not allow you to keep the funds in US dollars if you're in Canada or anywhere else in the world?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So if you're, say, based in the UK and you're selling on the US market, Amazon gives you two options. So they can pay you out in your local currency and they'll convert it at 1.5% exchange rate. So, on $100,000, you'll lose $1,500. OFX gives you the ability to issue a US dollar bank account held in the United States. So then you can receive those US dollars, hold it in US dollars, and then use those US dollars to pay your suppliers in China. So you create a natural hedge. So you don't even have to convert it back to pounds. So the big issue is that most people outside of the US, they want to sell into the US and then hold those US dollars to pay their suppliers in China because, they have a lot of expenses in US and US dollar is king. If you're, say, Canadian and you want US dollars, you don't want it converted automatically back into Canadian dollars and then from Canadian dollars back into US dollars to pay your suppliers.
Yeah, that seems silly. And then you had said something earlier that piqued my interest too, of the Amazon conversion will charge you 1.5%, and then OFX will charge you 0.5% or less. Does that depend on like how much you're having converted, or just like what the currency is doing on the market?
Yeah. Most people are on like a fixed margin of 0.5%. And then if you're, doing larger volumes, we'll decrease it as you grow. So theoretically, if you do over $100,000, maybe $200,000, you might go to 0.45 or 0.4, and it'll go all the way down to like we've got, some clients doing 100 million and they're on like 0.1% margin. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's all relative. Like as your business grows, as you get a bit more complex, there's more competition. We're not the only player in the market, so it's not a monopoly. And we're kind of like OFX is born on trying to offer a fairer and better exchange rate and kind of a better service. So where we differentiate ourselves is that we offer not only just an online platform that you can manage yourself 24/7, but we also offer customer service 24/7 as well. And that customer service is not just someone out of the Philippines, that is someone based in the US, based in Canada, based in the UK, based in Australia. So you do get a customer service follow the sun model where, depending on what time of the day you call up, you will get someone in the office that's available at that time. So during the work hours of the US, you'll get someone in the US or Canada. So it's always nice to get Canadians. They're always happy and chirpy.
That's true.
So if you want an inside tip, call it early in the morning because you'll get a Canadian. Or if you're up for a laugh, call in the afternoon or evening and you'll get an Australian.
I love what you call that, the follow the sun like schedule. That's an awesome term for it. And you took my next question, which was what makes OFX different. Good Lord. So
yeah, well, it was funny because like I remember back in the day, like, so I've been with OFX. This is why I've lost my hair. Like in my photo, I gave you, I had hair. I even had more hair than that when I started OFX, but like obviously moving into this role made it a bit more stressful. As you can tell, I was like, it was at nighttime when we started this call, early morning. And I'm managing like the global aspect. So my boss is in the US and San Francisco office. And then I've also got to kind of like look after the UK and European offices and kind of deal with the marketplaces over there. So I'm at calls at like 10 o'clock at night. So early in the morning to late at night. But I do get the middle of the day off, or like, well, I shouldn't tell everyone that, but I do go for a surf sometimes in the middle of the day, or go for a run and try to enjoy the sun or the warm weather in Australia.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, right there with you. A global anything, it has to be an around the clock thing. So, I mean, you'll find yourself in, I found myself in like 2, 3 a.m. meetings, just not even saying a word, just being part of the meeting, which is always fun.
It's a lot easier now, like working from home. I think it would be a bit harder at the office, like going in and sitting up at like 10 o'clock at night or 6 in the morning.
you'd be living in the office.
Some people do that.
When it comes to, I've always been curious about this. When it comes to the full process and where where businesses get charged, right? You mentioned the 0.5% when they pull that out, but like, I think a business owner is going to think when they pull that out, when they send it, do they have to pull it out every 2 weeks when Amazon sends it in to convert? Like, I guess, where exactly are they getting charged in this process, and where are they saving?
Yeah, great question, because
that's the scary part, I think, to a lot of them.
Yeah, like it's funny you say that, because I don't get asked that question often, but it is probably something that I need to kind of bring up and answer, because we act similar to kind of what they call a multi-currency account, where it's similar to a bank account. We can't officially say that it's a bank account, but it acts pretty much along the side of a bank account, where we issue your own account number held in the country that you sell in your company name. So that's say if you want to, outside of the US and you want to sell into the US, we'll issue a US dollar account with Bank of America held in the United States. When you receive funds into that account, you can hold it there until you desire to move it. So you can, use those funds, sit there for say 3 months, and then once you decide to use those funds to, say, pay a supplier or bring some funds back to yourself to pay yourself a salary, you can just log into the platform and do that anytime you want online. Or you can use the money to pay your third-party outsourcing agent in the Philippines. So we'll do the exchange rate from US dollars to Philippine peso, and we'll do a same-day transfer to the Philippines. So it's quick and easy and fast. If you want to go into multiple markets, you can manage multiple currency accounts from one login. So that's like one of the major benefits of using OFX over kind of setting up and flying to like the UK, flying to Europe and setting up a business, and obviously going through all the expenses of setting up a bank account in each country. You don't have multiple logins. You've got one login. You can have a US dollar account, a euro account, a pound account, an Australian dollar account, a Japanese yen account, a Hong Kong, Singapore dollar. If you want to go to Singapore, Amazon just opened up. So you can have all those accounts in one place. You can move money between them as you need to. You can automate. So as soon as funds come in, they automatically get transferred to another account or back to your home account. So it's pretty simple. We want to try to make it as simple as possible, for you to manage your money, and also create natural hedges where possible. So you don't have to kind of like do currency conversions all the time. You're not mandated to do the currency conversions. You've got the option of when you want to move the money. We don't want to make you a currency expert. If you do want to kind of talk around how you best to manage your money, or kind of if you want to lock in an exchange rate for the future, talk to us. Like, as I said, we're open 24/7. We do have customer service in-house in the countries that we serve. So that's pretty good. Just a one simple, easy login to manage all your payments, and no fees to set up. So I probably should have gone back to your question around fees. So no fees to set up, and no ongoing maintenance fees. So like, it's like literally you set up the account. It's free. There's no like costs if you don't decide to use it. You might receive a few emails asking why, but that's probably the main thing. I'm sure you can turn those off. And we only make our money when you decide to withdraw funds or convert the funds. So that's the 0.5% or less. So why we only charge 0.5% and not kind of like 1% and make a bit more money is because, we're out there to get a fairer rate. And then also we transfer $150 billion, or no, $175 billion since inception. So, and we did, I think it was $20 billion last year, or $25 billion last year. So we transfer a lot of funds, so
Mhm.
we 0.5% on $25 billion. We're happy with that. Yeah, and so we're on like a margin game of like a higher volume. So similar to Amazon, if you're an Amazon seller and you sell a competitive product at you want to kind of slim down your margins and you want to make more sales.
Gotcha.
Makes sense. Definitely.
Hopefully it makes sense.
No, it does.
There was a long pause there. I was like,
Well,
makes sense.
because I'm just wondering, like, because I'm one of those people who like doesn't trust Bitcoin because I don't understand it, and I was just thinking, like, what actually happens when you're like converting a currency? Like, I just think of like, I don't know, like Wonka vision, like something happens, it's floating above your head, and then it's like a gobstopper. I don't know.
I'm gonna send you some YouTube videos.
Okay.
It's all on YouTube. When businesses are taking it out of Amazon, or let's say Amazon is putting it into that Bank of America account, do they get charged there too?
No, they shouldn't. So, well, the US is a funny one because the US banking system is archaic at the best of times. So there's two ways of paying in the US. There's via domestic wire or there's via ACH. If you pay via ACH, it should be a straightforward process, no fees for you paying into their account. If you pay via the traditional wire transfer, I think that's just your normal bank's transfer fees, but there's no receiving fees from OFX. In terms of like Amazon, they mandate that it has to be kind of ACH. So we're available to receive from, say, PayPal and payment gateways like Afterpay. So non-Amazon sellers, we've got a lot of website sellers as well who are using payment gateways like Stripe, and we connect up to those so they can receive funds in from their online off Amazon payments.
And how immediate is that? I guess the funds to when they can withdraw it, because I mean that I think is top of mind for a lot of businesses that are doing international shipping and trying to lock in containers. Some of them even just in WeChat groups and saying, "Hey, I'll wire you the money the next day. I just want to lock this in because I have inventory ready to ship." So how immediate is that availability of the funds?
Yeah, so the funds are available obviously the next day when Amazon pays you. So like if Amazon pays you today, they should arrive the next day. That's just the normal ACH clearing, overnight clearing, the way that it happens in the US. And once it's available, it's pretty much as soon as you say, yes, I want to pay, they'll get paid out the same day. So if you're holding US dollars with OFX, we'll do an international wire to your, say, supplier in China, and they should receive the funds that afternoon. So there shouldn't be any delay in terms of like it takes 3 days or something. They should receive that afternoon. If you're paying out to like, say, certain countries that have faster payment networks that are kind of like the UK, Australia, and like mainly the UK, where if you do a payment, it should be cleared in a few hours. So, or if not straight away, because like there's certain banking, like each country has its own like speed of like how they process. Like the US is like a bit slow in terms of how fast payments come in. That's probably why you're asking the question, because like that's why you've got like certain like Veeam in the US. Like it was kind of like built on just a really frustration of slow bank payments between individuals and the cost of sending money between people. But outside of the US, it's free to move money like domestically, and it's free to pay. Like I can pay someone in Australia, like anyone in Australia, I can pay instantly via my bank transfer, and I can just go, hey, what's your bank details? And I'll just pay them straight away. So I don't have to use like a third-party app to do that. But yeah, it is a great question because it really frustrated me when I went to University of Texas and I rocked up and I was like, oh, how do I pay for my school fees? And they're like, oh, you write a check.
Yep.
I was like, what are your bank details? I'll just do a bank transfer. And they're like, no, we don't accept bank transfers. We only offer a check in the mail or like in person. I was like, damn it. Like I was at the bank and he's like, do you want a checkbook? And I was like, said no. I was like,
because you don't pay for anything else.
Who asked for a checkbook these days? Like they got rid of checks like so long ago in like New Zealand and Australia.
Oh yeah, that's the whole reason that I have, books of checks is because I had to pay Kennesaw State University with a check.
Yeah.
It was so annoying.
I was like, this is crazy. I was like, oh, this can't be the only service that like the office checks. And I was like, when I was there, they like went to pay my landlord, and they're like, yeah, check or direct debit. I was just like, thank God they got direct debit. So direct debit is enabled on the bank accounts that we issue as well. So that's a really good insight. So if you're outside of the US and you need direct debit to pay your state taxes, so we've got like some of the largest sellers who are website sellers, and they have to pay individual state tax. And as you know, there's like 50 states in the US, so there's a lot of state tax they have to pay. Not so much of an issue for Amazon sellers because Amazon collects it for you, but for like if you're doing off Amazon and you're doing website sellers, then you have to worry about state tax in the US. So if you're outside of the US, you're paying into the US.
And is that something that they can just have like their accountant be wired up as a user? Does it support like multi-users and different people in the departments, like let's say an accounts payable
so
department?
You can set up multi-user, so you can have multi-logins, and then you can, most larger companies have that. Most smaller companies don't. They're just like, they'll just share the data with them. We do have a Xero integration, which goes back into your accounting platform. So if you are using Xero, all that data will just flow through automatically. QuickBooks, I know that's a big one in the US. So that's on the roadmap. So that's coming soon. And obviously, if you decide to, if you're selling in the US and you decide to go into UK, Europe, VAT, so like similar to state sales tax, VAT is a big thing. So you do have to think about that. Probably touch on that a bit more because this talk's meant to be about international.
Please.
So we're kind of diverged. We kind of go in 360, and then we focus on OFX, and then we spin out. So if you decide to sell into the UK, Europe, I'll recommend probably doing a minimum of $1 million sales in the US before you decide to kind of like move in, because there is kind of like before you go, you will kind of want to have your house in order, and then you want to kind of go, okay, well, how can I set myself up for success? Because at the end of the day, you want to be purchased by like a Thrasio or another one of these aggregators that are just popping up everywhere. So Thrasio is a client of OFX's, so they use us because they sell globally. So when they do acquire you, they think about kind of, are your accounting order, are your books in order? Like, do you, make sure is there an opportunity for you to expand internationally, or have you taken the opportunity? So you want to make sure you get set up correctly. So you want to have your house in order in the US. Like if you've got brand listings, so you're trademarked, you've got A+ content, you kind of set, and then you decide, okay, well, I want to ship into the UK market or Europe. Doing that from your supplier's point of view, it's actually not too hard. Like you just talk to your supplier, like they do shipments. I'm sure your supplier already ships to the UK and Europe. It's not like it's it's Mars or somewhere. Like it's like a US, sellers usually they're like, oh, it's going to be so much harder. Like, I have to do 2 shipments. I can't just do one to the US. I have to do, a shipment to the US and then a shipment to Europe. It's like, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. There is the option to do train from China to Europe, but not really that recommended. It's not really even faster or cheaper. So still boat, take it on the old steamship, and then you send it into Europe, and once it's in there, you can decide which country you want to be VAT registered for. So this is like probably one of the critical things. So the new law post July is that Amazon and the marketplaces you sell on will collect the VAT for you. So you don't actually have to kind of register for VAT in every single country you sell in. But one critical thing is, FBA with Amazon, so if you sign up to kind of like the FBA storage, they'll place your storage all across Europe. So if you do have, similar to America, that creates Nexus. So then therefore you have to sign up for VAT in each country. To avoid that, I would recommend selling on Cdiscount. So it's so second largest one in France. So Cdiscount, they have their own FBA equivalent, but it's they offer unbox, and they can ship to any marketplace throughout Europe. So they do all their storage in France. So you can just ship into France. So that means you can store your goods with their FBA equivalent. They've got much higher storage levels and lower fees than FBA typically, and that allows you to ship unboxed. So it's not going to come, with Cdiscount branding on it. Like all their services are unboxed if you want, and then they do like shipping all throughout Europe, and then they do the returns as well. So that is a better option than having to go through the troubles of setting up for VAT in every single country you sell in, because if you do it via FBA fulfillment, like I'm not saying like you can do both, but you just have to be wary of when you do ship into like FBA, they're going to go, okay, we're going to put some of your storage in Poland, some of your storage in Germany, some of your storage in Italy, some of your storage in Spain. It's just like, okay, well, that's like $1,000 here, $1,000 there, $1,000 there of like VAT set up and ongoing kind of like reporting and like, so you got to be cautious of that. Pre-Brexit, I think the natural step was to send all your shipping into the UK. And once you're selling in the UK, you can just ship it into Europe, or like you don't actually have to store it in Europe, but you'll like if someone orders from your European store, you'll just like it'll be stored in the UK and it'll ship in. Post Brexit, so Brexit was obviously a big thing. They don't allow that kind of channel, so you have to store your goods in Europe. So that's a big one. With Cdiscount, we've got like the first 3 months free in terms of your seller subscription fees. So you can hit me up after that if you want to get your first 3 months free. Also, it waives. So they have an agreement. So it's like a similar to a multi-country setup. So Cdiscount's like the biggest one second biggest one in France. And then there's Kaufland, which is a huge one out of Germany. Then there's eMag, which covers kind of like all the Eastern European countries, like from like Poland to Hungary to kind of like all those Eastern European countries. And then there's ePrice, and ePrice kind of like they cover kind of Italy and a part of the Eastern European as well. So it gives you access to one cost. So you only pay the subscription fee for Cdiscount, and it gets you access to all the other marketplaces. So you don't have to pay a subscription fee, or like when I say subscription fee, it's like your monthly kind of like seller fee. Like Amazon charges like $49 a month or $59 a month. So yeah, it gets that waived. I think it's like something like 30 euros a month. So you don't actually have like the upfront cost. So of selling in those multiple marketplaces. And they allow you to push across your listing across those marketplaces. So you can sell in France, Germany, and all Eastern Europe through these 4 different multiple marketplaces. And when you're saying like 4 marketplaces, you're like, oh man, that's going to be a headache. So it kind of like it just allows you to push into those. When I say headache, I think opportunity for myself. I'm like, well, if it's a headache for me, that means it's a headache for everyone else. It's like, it means like there's less competition. I'm only dealing with competition who are based out of like Europe. So they're not used to kind of the competition out of the US. And I know my product's been successful in the US. And if your product is successful in the US, oh man, like it is hard to be successful in the US. Like you have to have a niche within a niche. And you have to have really successful kind of like reviews and everything like that. And you've got to kind of like hustle, being successful in the US is hard. Opposite, if you expand that to Europe, it's a lot less competition. You also, the benefits are if you make more money, you can then make more. You sell more. You then get better prices with your supplier, so you can then make more money back in the US market. So if you want to be competitive in the US, you got to think about international, because if you're just thinking about the US, you're only taking into account your buying opportunity in the US, and you might sell, say, 10,000 units a year in the US, whereas you could sell 10,000 units in the US plus another 10,000 units in Europe. So when you go back to your supplier and you say, hey, I'm doing 20,000 units, can I get like $2 off a unit? And then you go back to your like profit on both marketplaces. You're like, oh, wow, I'm making like 10% more profit or 20% more profit. So you got to think about in that, like, you can't think about it in terms of treating the two marketplaces separately. You got to think about it as an overarching business. Like, how do I, decrease my costs, and how do I become more competitive in each market? So,
that's definitely
or terms.
good advice.
Yeah, I think terms has been a big topic that a lot of sellers have been starting to focus on more so now, because it's hurting their cash flow in regards to how long it's taking products to even get to the US, right? Where it used to take them maybe 40 to 60 days. Now they're seeing 70 days in just shipping, trying to get it over to the East Coast. Plus, whatever ridiculous production times or production queues those factories have. So I'm guessing OFX is also integrated with all these other marketplaces like Cdiscount. Is that right?
Yeah. So like we'll offer a euro. So we'll offer a euro account, and then that allows you to receive in pretty much all those European countries. So because they're all part of Europe. So you don't have to integrate directly. So we are partnered with them in terms of like, we have access to the marketplace. So we say, okay, well, if you want to sell on Cdiscount, we can introduce you to the onboarding account manager. So like, a lot of these marketplaces are a lot easier to deal with than Amazon. So I'm not saying don't deal with Amazon. Amazon is still like the king, but Amazon's like, you're like a small minnow in like a big pond.
Very big pond.
So like, when you sign up to Amazon, like Europe, like, you're not going to get a help. You have to like go through all these like processes, and you have to figure it out yourself. Whereas like a lot of the other marketplaces like Cdiscount, you'll have a personal introduction. He'll kind of like go through, how to sell on it. He'll then, well, I'm not saying he, but like he or she. So they will walk you through kind of like what's successful. What do you need to win? Like, hey, you need to improve your listing. Like, here's what works. Here's introduction to. They will do the language conversion for you at a basic rate, and then they will say, oh, if you want to kind of optimize it, here's another service partner that can kind of like we work with. And so they'll handhold you through that, which is typically only available on Amazon for kind of like 10 million plus sellers, or probably even more these days. And Amazon will probably charge you for that. But yeah, so these marketplaces, they want kind of like good sellers, and that's why I say probably have a trademark, probably have like A+ content before you kind of expand there, because these marketplaces, they want to cherry pick like the best of the best. They want like a product that they know it's going to be successful. If you're looking to expand to Europe and you don't even have a trademark, and you're just like looking to just amass, like just sell everywhere, I don't know how successful that's going to be. I'm not going to say it's not successful, because a lot of people do that. Like, they drop ship and, they're making tens of millions of dollars, but like, there's a lot of hustle in that. And I like to deal with brands that, are going to be longevity brands that are kind of, you sell on a marketplace and you could see it there in 5 years' time. You could, you have an end game in mind. So you want to sell a brand, you want to get a following behind it, and you want to sell it, for potentially like $2 to $5 million, or even more, if like a Thrasio comes along or a VC comes along and buys you. So that at the end of the day, that's either the end game, or it's you create a business so big that it just, you can, hire someone to run it, and you can sit on your lovely beach house somewhere in
Go
the world
surfing in the middle of the day.
Exactly.
Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but when it comes to these introductions with Cdiscount or OnBuy in the UK or any other marketplace, is that something that OFX could also potentially help with?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we're definitely happy to make those introductions, and we like to make those introductions. We've got special discounts for those marketplaces. And if you do sell into those marketplaces, OFX can even offer a special discount as well. And then we've got our service providers that we work with to help you who sell it into multiple marketplaces. So if you decide to sell into kind of the UK or Europe and you're thinking about VAT is going to be an issue, like we work with VAT tax partners like Avask and Hello Tax. I know Hello Tax has been on your podcast already, which
we just had them on.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's sort of service providers that meet every single like kind of barrier. So don't be afraid to kind of reach out to OFX. I know like international payments is probably the last thing on your to-do list. Like, first of all, you need to think about shipping. You need to think about listing optimization. You need to think about, VAT, and then is my product right for that audience? Most products that sell in like the basic niches, like, to be honest, like we're all humans, and Europe is pretty similar to the US market. They both have a summer and winter. So like, unless you sell something very kind of like with an American flag on it, I think most of the products will sell globally. One thing I would probably say, even if you are a bit risky risk adverse and kind of conservative, just go into the UK market. They both speak English. It's probably the easiest market to go into if you're going out of the US. Obviously, because it's both speaking English, it's a bit more competitive than like going to some of the European markets. But there is language differences, even though we both speak English. Like in America, you'll probably call it a grill, where you have your barbecue, whereas in Australia and probably the UK, you'll call that a barbecue or BBQ. So
yeah, we make barbecue on the grill.
Yeah. So like, there's like different ways. Like pants in the UK is what they call undies, so underpants. So like if you're selling trousers, so that's what they call trousers over there. If you're selling, like jeans, don't call them pants, or like, because that will actually come up in the UK as like undies and lingerie. So yeah, I remember because I did a gap year when I was 18, just out of high school, and I taught in a primary school in the UK for a year. And I remember all the kids being, "Oh, sir, you can't call those pants." I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, this is just. It's like, I was like, okay. I always like every morning when I went to like making sure, I was like, I didn't say the word pants, because like that meant undies, and I was like, "Ooh, why are you talking about pants, sir?" But yeah,
it's a great impression.
Probably cut that one out of the podcast. But
we don't cut anything.
We're live, baby.
But yeah, so like there's certain like terminologies that you got to like think about in the local language. So that's probably one thing that I'd take away. It's free. You don't have to you can just Google it. But like I'm sure you use all like LM10 or certain keyword optimization tools that you can see which keywords are ranking. So I think that's pretty. If you're selling in the US, this is why I love it. Like, if you're selling in the US market, it's the most competitive market in the world. And if you're successful in the US, you're going to be successful internationally. Like, it's just so simple. But it seems like everyone in the US, no, I shouldn't say everyone, but like there's a large proportion of the US who sell in the US, they have a successful brand, and then they try to replicate that brand, and they go through all the trouble of starting a secondary brand, or kind of like try to break into the US again. And it's like, okay, you're spending a lot of money to kind of break into a competitive market. It's like, if you've already got a successful brand, you can reuse some of those. When you enter into on Amazon specifically, in like the UK, European market, you can reuse those reviews. So if you've got like 5,000 reviews if you're lucky with 5,000 reviews in the US, you can like list on Amazon in UK, and they'll give you kind of a sweet haven period of when you list that you can bring across your reviews. So like, it's not like you're listing with 0 reviews in the UK or 0 reviews in Europe. You will list and it'll say, hey, this seller has got 5,000 reviews in the US market. As you start to get reviews in the local market, they'll start to replace the local reviews over the overseas reviews. So it's crazy that someone would kind of like go, oh no, all I know is the US market. I'm going to invest in a new product, and every single time they invest in a new product, it's like so risky because the US market is only getting more competitive, whereas like the international markets, especially Australia. I live in Australia, and Amazon's taking off here, and if you decide to go on Amazon Australia, like some of the listings like that are making like good bank, or like they're horrible, to be completely honest. Like some of the like they had to so Amazon changed it, so they had to turn on FBA fulfilled products from the US. So now if you go into Amazon Australia, a lot of the listings are actually US. They are actually US products, but the shipping will take like a month to get here, or like they'll take like 3 weeks. So it's like we're in this like situation in Australia where it's not a huge market, but Australians have a lot of money in comparison. Like their GDP is up there with like the top in the world. So, and we spend majority of our money on like silly things. So
you're turning into an American.
Yeah. So if you do decide to like branch out into a market, like think about Australia. Like if you're worried about like testing out an international market, Australia, like you don't have to send a lot of goods. Like you could literally send 50 units of your product and do an air freight, or kind of just a box, and then send it to FBA Australia, and then think about the long game. Like depending on how long you're in this for, like if you're in it for kind of like 2 to 3 years, you could set yourself up. You say like, oh, I'm going to sell my product in 3 years, or like sell my business. Like, hey, I'm in Australia. I've already got like 50 reviews. I just need like send more product there, or like list more products. And they're like, oh wow, like he's already thought about it. He set up the business process to sell in those markets. So it's quite highly looked after when you're looking to sell.
Well, I imagine actually the reason that they would even want to set up, let's say, another storefront in the US versus going internationally is because there isn't like a step-by-step process. I've looked for it out there at least, and I saw a few that touched on a lot of the high-level views, sort of just like first you go to Amazon and then you request to sell internationally, just a very high-level things. But I think there's not enough like there's not a YouTube video. It just shows like in 20 minutes, hey, this is how I did it. Maybe that's another project for OLX.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much my project now. I'm just like, I've got to like. So what we're going to try and do for the next year is kind of, first of all, I've reached out to pretty much all the marketplaces in Europe, and they're all ecstatic about potentially getting more brands over there. So like, that's why I say, like, if you talk to the second tier marketplace, like non-Amazon, they're like, yeah, we would love referrals. Like if you could send us new sellers, just make sure like the number one request they have is like, make sure that like, they don't ask for trademark, but when they're talking about like, they want quality listings and they want a brand names. They don't want kind of like non-branded goods. They're like, if they got brand names, if they're selling in another marketplace and they're successful there, perfect. And then we'll handhold them to set up the marketplace. So like you don't hear about that. It's like when you think about selling internationally, you're like, oh, I'll sell on Amazon, and it's just like it's going into the abyss of like, I'm going to get flagged for this issue, or like my product's going to get taken down, or it's going to create like a Amazon flag that I'm doing something risky by selling internationally. Like there's so many risks about like being only on one marketplace as well. So if you put all your eggs in one basket, no one, like people talk about it, but no one really kind of does anything about it. So, selling into like say Europe and selling on multiple marketplaces, you're kind of like taking yourself off that risky. If you just sell in the US and you just sell on Amazon, obviously you might want to look at Walmart as like an alternative. Like, for Walmart again is only looking for like top sellers. So, that's pretty much where we'll go.
Walmart's a whole other podcast itself.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to open up Walmart bag. I was like, put that one back in the bag.
That is a conversation we're looking to have with anyone at any time. So, I mean, maybe that's another thing we could talk about later on. Not today, not right now.
Put that one back. I was like, have you got another hour?
Well, but for today, Ed, if anybody is looking to get started with OFX, or if they have any questions about the information you shared today, where can they get a hold of you?
Feel free to email me at Edward Wiley or Edward.Wiley, both work, at ofx.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn. Should be quite active on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out, ask any questions. If you want introductions to marketplaces, I'm here anytime. As you can see, it's now daytime in Australia, so I usually work early in the morning to late at night. So no worries if you're in a different time zone to Australia.
Perfect. And that is ofx.com for anybody who is looking for more information. We'll link that in the description below. Ed, thank you so much for coming on with us today. This is really, really insightful.
No, perfect. Well, lovely having a great chat with you in the early hours of the morning, and hopefully we can set one up in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm all for it.
Thank you again.
Maybe one on the Texas Longhorns versus.
We're sticking with horns down. We're sticking with horns down for the rest of the day.
Well, thank you, everybody who tuned in. If you guys like what you heard today, give us a like, comment, share, subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the show on your favorite podcast platform, and ring the bell for notifications so that you never miss a conversation with leaders in supply chain and e-commerce like Ed Wiley from OFX. Thank you again, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.